So again, this whole section or this whole chapter basically is about quadrilaterals, and we're going to talk about different types of quadrilaterals that have different properties to them which allow us to solve problems differently. We're going to start with a parallelogram. Is everybody ready? Okay. So in a parallelogram, opposite sides are two things. They are congruent, which means they are what? Equal. And it's kind of in the name. If it's called a parallelogram, what do you think opposite sides are also? Parallel, yes. Okay, so opposite sides are both congruent and parallel. This is what a parallelogram looks like. Okay, it's kind of like a slanted rectangle. The way that I mark them congruent is by one little slash, okay? The opposite sides are going to have two slashes to differentiate between which ones are congruent and which ones are not. Then to say that they are parallel, here are the markings that I use. I use arrows, okay? One arrow means those two are parallel. If I do double arrows, that differentiates between which sides are parallel. So far, so good? Opposite sides are two things. What are they? Congruent and parallel. Then the next one is opposite angles. Okay? Opposite angles. The angles that are opposite of each other in your parallelogram. So these two, let me put some letters to make it easier. So A and C, those are opposite angles. B and D are another pair of opposite angles. And in a parallelogram, opposite angles are congruent, yes. So based off of this property, I could give you one angle. Let's say I said angle A is 100 degrees. You can automatically tell me what angle C is because it would be 100 degrees, right? The next one is talking about consecutive angles. What does it mean to be consecutive? Opposite is directly across, so consecutive would be next to each other. So what angle on this side is next to A? D. And if I'm going up here, which one's next to A? B. Okay. Consecutive angles in a parallelogram are supplementary. So with that being said, could I figure out what these other two angles are in this example up here? If these two are supplementary, that means they add up to be, and so what would this one have to be? 80. Which means this one would also be 80, right? Opposite angles are congruent. Are those supplementary? Yep. Are those supplementary? Are those supplementary? Yep. Opposites are congruent, consecutive or supplementary. Now, just to double check, we learned this in the first section. How many sides does that quadrilateral have? Okay. And minus 2 times 180 tells me what my total should be. 2 times 180 is 360. So if I add all of these together, that should give me 360 degrees. 100 plus 100 plus 80 plus 80. Let's check and see. It's going to be 0. 8 and 8 is 16. Carry the 1. Does that give me 360 degrees? Okay. So all of this ties together. But these properties that we're talking about, these properties of a parallelogram, you need to memorize because we're going to add shapes and add properties. All right, number 4 is talking about the diagonals. Well, the diagonals go from corner to corner. Okay, so if I'm going to draw a diagonal, it's going to go from D to B. And then the other diagonal is going to go from A to C. This next property says that these diagonals bisect each other. That means cut each other in half. So with that, if I'm told this is a parallelogram, then I know that this piece is congruent to that piece. And then this piece would be congruent to that piece. Okay, you can tell by the markings but you won't always have the markings. You sometimes will just be told that it is a parallelogram. And then the last one says, if there is one right angle in a parallelogram, then the parallelogram is going to end up having 4 right angles. So if one of your angles is 90 degrees in a parallelogram, all 4 of them will be 90 degrees, which would make it a specific type of parallelogram that we haven't talked about yet. So the first 4 are what we really need to remember. Opposite sides are congruent and parallel. Opposite angles are congruent. Consecutive angles are supplementary. And the diagonals bisect each other. And we're going to use all of those properties to help find missing segments or angles. Everybody ready? All right, let's take a look at number 1. Each quadrilateral below is a parallelogram. Find the missing measures. Some of them are segments. Some of them are angles. Everybody ready? Okay. First property says that opposite sides are congruent and parallel. So use the congruent part. I'm giving you a calculator because you're going to need one and I think your phones. Unless you want to do the math mentally. If you have one, you can use your own or you can use mine, either way. All right, so let's take a look. Opposite sides are congruent. So what is the length of segment AB in your picture? So which other segment would also be 15? Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and label everything in my picture before I start answering my questions. All right, what is BC labeled as in your picture? So what does that mean is also 8? AD. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and label that. Again, I'm not going to answer my questions until I have everything labeled in my picture. The next thing is that opposite angles are congruent. So fill in the angle that you can based off of the one that's given to you. They give me that angle D is 68 degrees. What other angle would also be 68 degrees? Angle B. Okay, angles go inside your picture, so segments go outside. What did we say about consecutive angles? They are supplementary. So it doesn't really matter which one you start with. I'm just going to start here on the left side. If angle D is 68, angle A is going to be supplementary to that. So how would I figure out what angle A is? Yes. 180, that's supplementary, minus the 68 that we know. You all have a calculator. Do the math for me. What do we get? 112, which means what else is also 112? See. I have taken everybody's phones, so if you could give me your phone, please. Thank you. All right, now that you have everything filled out, go through and answer your questions next to that picture. What is the length of AD? We labeled it in our picture. Okay, what is the length of DC? 15. What is the measure of angle A? The measure of angle B? And then the measure of angle C. Okay.
So why did you try
Because it says, the third property says consecutive angles are supplementary. And so that means the angles that are next to each other, so I chose these two A and D. Supplementary means 180. So I just took this one angle, the 68 that I was given, and took it out of 180 to figure out what the other one was. Is everybody good? All right, try number 2 then. It's exactly the same type of question. Nothing is different. Label everything in your picture. Label everything in your picture before you start trying to answer questions. Opposite side, when you hold it down, opposite Once you have everything labeled in your picture, go through and answer your questions. When you look at these numbers on the outside on the set, which is what these two are, right? This 127 is supposed to be 29. Okay. Which is what yeah. Yeah.
And then J at that point. Okay. Where K at?
What angle's next to it? That's the side. The angle's inside your figure. Yeah. All right, what is opposite of JM? KL, so the KL is going to be 29. And what's opposite LM? 21. What I need you to make sure you understand is these numbers that are outside are talking about segment lengths. The numbers that are inside are my angle measures, so don't get those confused when you're starting to answer your questions. All right, now let's look at our angles. If angle L is 127, what else is 127? J. Okay. And then to find K, I'm going to do what? Yes. 180 minus 127. You guys have calculators. What is that?
53. No.
Yeah, 53. So what else is 53? Okay. And then we can answer our questions. If I'm looking for JK, again, I'm looking for the segment. What is between J and K? We labeled it 21. And then KL is what's in between K and L on the outside. We labeled that 29. Angle J, look at angle J. What did we say that one was? And angle K. And angle M. Okay. If you don't remember your properties, you're not going to know how to do these. That's why I'm telling you these properties are important to remember. The more shapes we add, the more properties we have. Is everybody ready? Now look at this picture. What are those things called that are drawn in the middle? Starts with a D. Diagonals. And what did our property say about the diagonals? They bisect each other. Okay. So first of all, let's start. RS is labeled as how much? So what else is 27? Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and label that in my picture. And then RU is labeled as, so what else is 18? There you go. Now inside my picture, UV is labeled 7. You see that? So what else is 7? Yep, the other half of the diagonal. And then what does it tell me at the bottom? Okay, RT is that's the whole thing, right? So if that is cut in half, what would each small piece be? 15, so I'm going to label that as 15. Now we can go through and answer our questions. What is UT? Okay. What is ST? VS? And then VT? Do you see how if I don't label my picture, I'm not going to remember all this stuff? Write all over your pictures. When you take the EOC later this year, it's going to be on the computer. You're going to want to draw these and write all over them. You're not going to be able to remember what everything is. Okay? Let the picture help you by writing what you know. So far, so good. All right. Now we're going to have to pull back some old stuff here. Let's take a look at. We don't give any side lengths here, do we? So let's ask this. What did we say opposite sides were? They were both congruent, and what was the other thing? Parallel. So let's focus here for just a second. I want to focus on CF and DE, and then I want to focus on that diagonal that cuts through them. Do you see how this little angle right here they tell me is 21 degrees? Do you guys remember way back when we talked about alternate interior angles? And we said that if we have parallel lines, alternate interior angles are always going to be congruent. Yep. So if I'm looking, that top angle CFG is labeled as 21 degrees. If I want the alternate interior, where is that going to be? It's at D. Is it the top one at D or the bottom one at D? The bottom one. So this angle right here is also what? 21 degrees. And then if we look, let me do some erasing, hold on. At the other side, CD and FE, and we look at its, transversal. This angle right here where the arrow is 71 degrees. Where would its alternate interior angle be? Yes, GCD up at C, but on the right side is also 71 degrees. Kind of okay with that. It's bringing back something from way back when. But we can't forget about it because we got to use it. All right, now let me look at the next thing that they tell me. What does it say at the bottom? Okay, so FED, I'm going to highlight that from F to E to D. That's that big angle there is 134. So can I find out, I'm going to put a question mark. Can I find out what that angle is? Yes. The whole thing is how much? 134. What is this side of it? 71. So how can I figure out what that is? The whole angle, right? How much is the whole angle? And then we can subtract the piece that we know. What does that give me, 63? Okay. So where I put that question mark is 63. Which means what else is 63 up at? Yeah, so right here, 63, that's its alternate interior angle. And let's see what we can answer based off of all of that. Is everybody good so far with what we've done? All right, so let's look at first one, DEC. I'm going to highlight it so it's easier to see. DEC, what did we label that one as? Okay. All right, next one, CDE. I'm going to label that. Ooh, this one's going to be, let's skip that one for a minute. We're going to come back to that one because that one's going to take a little bit more work. All right, ECD. ECD, what did we have that one labeled as? 71. And then DFE, where am I at? Oh, DFE, I don't have that one either, do I? Okay. So let's take a look. These two. No, I'm not going to skip it. I just need to draw it bigger. It's not too long.
Let's just do it how we been doing it.
I want to show you something. Okay. So without my diagonals in it, let's take a look. So sometimes you have to be able to imagine things a little bit apart. So without my diagonals, what is that meant, the FED angle? What does it say at the bottom? 134, right? Can I find out what this angle is?
Yeah.
Because these two are supplementary. So let's do that first. Let's do 180.
But it's not like that on the number 4.
It is. I just left off the diagonals. What do we get? 46. Okay. So this whole angle is 46 degrees, yes?
Okay.
Now, imagine this.
But it's 21 on the picture though.
Okay, that's what I'm getting right. So we draw this in, right? It says this top part is 21, so can we figure out what that bottom one is going to be?
It got to be 21.
I need the total to be what? I need this whole angle to be how much?
46.
46. That part's 21, so what would this have to be to total 46? 25, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. Which means, what would this top one be? 25, right? Because it's alternate interior, yeah. So that can say, then we can go back and answer those questions. What is angle CDE? We just figured it out. 25. Whoops. And then DFE. DFE is also 25. Okay, so that one took a little bit more thinking. You got to be able to imagine, kind of look at what you got. And that one is a harder question. It's not impossible, though. You just have to keep that in mind, okay?
What was the whole point of 163?
Huh?
The whole point of 163.
Oh, so we used this part right here, knowing that that whole angle was 134, so I subtracted the 71 to get that 63 over there. All right, let's take a look at 5. This was not too hard. What's labeled, sides or angles? The sides, and are they next to each other or opposite of each other? Opposite. What is it that we know about opposite sides in the parallelogram? They're congruent. So if I want to solve for x, what would I do to those two things? Set them equal to each other. So do that. LM is 9x minus 25. And is 5x plus 7. I want you to solve for x. Is that what your x is? If opposite sides are congruent,
Wait, hold on.
I'm not doing anything.
So who started? I guess it's right.
What did we say about opposite sides? They are congruent, which means they are both. They are parallel. Congruent means what? Yeah, I said that one.
Subtract the X first, right?
Four. Okay,
Subtract the X first.
You can.
for that, we have to do.
Subtract.
All right, so what's my equation gonna look like?
Why can't we just do it like how 1, 2, 3?
What's the equation look like?
9x minus 25 equals 5x plus 7.
Okay, I like to move my x's first. That doesn't mean you have to, but I'm gonna take my smaller x, the 5x, and I'm gonna subtract it over to the 9. Then I want to get that 25 away from the 4x. So I'm going to add this over. What's 25 plus 7?
32.
Okay. And then I'm going to divide both sides by 4. And so what is x going to equal? 8. Do number 6, last one, just like number 5. Solve for y. I meant, just kidding. It says find yz. So solve for x, and then you'll have to plug it back in. So it's just one extra step. I'm giving you a pair of opposite sides. Solve it for x, and then plug that x back in to find the length of yz.
Quick.
I mean, what? I wouldn't know what the answer is. I haven't worked it out yet.
That's what I thought. Cause it's big casting on. You plug in 4 and say, oh, yeah.
How do I set this one up?
11x plus 1 equals 19x.
Okay. 11x, whoops, plus 1 equals 19x minus 31. Again, I like to move my x's, so I'm going to take my smaller, my 11x, and move it over to my 19. 19 minus 11 is 8. Then I want to get that 31 away from my 8, so I'm going to add it. So that gives me 32 equals 8x. And there you go. And I want to find yz, so look at that one. What do I plug it into? 19 times 4 minus, you guys have calculator, what is it? 45?